Bartenders of Reddit, what is the weirdest thing that you have ever witnessed at your job? I worked on the bar in a restaurant but would sometimes act as the host if things got busy on the floor. A couple came in once, I sat them down, gave them menus and all that. Not 10 minutes in, I pick up a call and it's a woman asking to speak to the guy. I politely let him know someone's on the phone and they say it's urgent. He has a quick chat, seems okay, and hangs up the phone before going back to the table. 5 minutes later, she calls again. I go over again, apologize, and say they seem really concerned. At this point, he's clearly tense and making an effort not to raise his voice. After a few minutes, he hangs up, hands the phone back to me, and says, if she calls again, just tell her I'm not interested in speaking to her. Lo and behold, she calls again, and I say exactly what he asked, to which she laughs in kind of a cliché crazy ex kind of way, and I crap you not, says well tell him I hope he doesn't eat too much because when he finds the tires I slashed he'll be walking home, wishing he'd spoken to me and hangs up. I went over a minute later and asked what kind of car he had because there was someone double parked outside and wanted to check it wasn't he. I figured it wasn't worth freaking him out if it was an idle threat. He described the car and said where he'd parked it. I took a cigarette break and went to check. All 4 tires were fine, but that poor bugger had not a single window left unsmashed or severely cracked and there were a couple of rocks laying on the ground. Needless to say, they did not stay to finish their meal. The phone call part reminds me of something that happened in the 1980s, pre-cell phone era. My husband was in graduate school with a guy who lived at home with an extremely overbearing mother. He had a chance to go to Israel to work on an archaeological dig for a few months, and we were excited for him, because he really needed to get away from his mom. The dig site was way the heck out in the desert, and the students were told they could give their families the phone number of a kind farmer who lived 5+ miles away. If there was an emergency, the family could call and the farmer would drive out to the site and bring the student back to use the phone. In the middle of the first night, consider the time difference, the farmer showed up at the site and said our friend's mother had called and needed to speak with him urgently. The farmer drove our friend back to his house so he could call his mom and it turned out she just missed him and wanted to chat. If I were the farmer, that would have happened only once, but it happened the second night as well, again, in the middle of the night. After that, the farmer rescinded his phone offer for all the students working at the site. That is absolutely nuts. It blows my mind how inconsiderate people can be, though it's reassuring to know it was like that even before the internet was a thing haha. A guy who pissed himself sitting on a bar stool and then wanted to fight me when I cut him off and wouldn't serve him a new drink. I was a bouncer for a few months at a dive bar and had to escort an older gentleman out to his cab because he had piss leaking all over his bar stool. That was the last straw for me. I have a love-hate relationship with dive bars. Sometimes they are fun, chilled places. Other times they are full of weirdos who are just too much to handle. They think dive bar is for the rough and tough. My favorite dive bar was this sketchy place whose clientele were nearly all so rich they could buy the bar with pocket change. They just enjoyed the chill vibes and no one trying to sell themselves to them. I've been to dive bars where everybody was just an easygoing person with a casual demeanor, and I've briefly stepped into places where I turned back around after walking in the door. Dive bar can mean a low-rent Cheers or it can mean getting shivved by bikers. This is surprisingly common. Car plowed into the bar I was working in, coming all the way in, and flipping a pool table on its side. Pinned 3 off-duty Applebee's waitresses against the bar. No one was hurt and the woman who was driving tried to order a drink. Did she at least order a round for the frightened waitresses she nearly killed? Doubt it, they sound like they could drink her under the table. And the woman who was driving tried to order a drink. Now that's the kind of crap I came here for. Off-duty Applebee's waitresses is a phrase I never expected to hear ever. That was a fantastic line. They are never off-duty. These were probably plainclothes Applebee's waitresses, retaining all the authority and were duty-bound to uphold the oath they had sworn to protect. God bless these heroes. If you served her, she could have went to court and said she got drunk after the accident. My lady watched The Good Wife, so I did too. We had a hit and run, sort of, that went like that. Guy clipped a jaywalker on a dark street, stops, and gets out, Jaywalker jumps up and starts screaming at him and running at him. Guy hops in and takes off. Cops go to his home an hour later, and of course, he's drinking now. I once witnessed a woman openly fondling herself, dress hiked up, underwear pulled aside, in the middle of a not super busy bar. It was very obvious she wanted people to see. The weird part was, after a bar back yelled at her and told to stop or get out, a guy walked up to the bar back and said, "Don't talk to my wife like that." This really happened. Seems like an exhibitionism/voyeurism type of deal, with the wife being the former and the husband being the latter. Not to kink shame, but you really shouldn't subject people to something like that without their consent. That isn't kink shaming, that's just common decency. Advocating for informed consent is not kink shaming. Learn 2 new words today, thanks. Husband and ladder? What do you think I am, stupid? No, wife and former. I may be dumb, but I ain't stupid. Used to have a regular who sold her time on Backpage. She loved our queso, so she always had the guys bring her there. What stuck out was that she always ordered Jägermeister and Diet Coke. In the same glass. I once had to kick her out because she got so wasted she was giving a blowjob under one of our tables. When I could clearly see the dick in her mouth, she lies about what she's doing and says she is looking for something. Just trying mumble, "It wasn't me," around the shaft holding down her tongue, haha. But he caught me under the counter. It wasn't me. She even caught me on camera. It wasn't me. She kept coming back for queso. Sounds like Terry on Reno 911. Nobody is saying you can't eat a banana, Terry, but you can't just stand on a corner for 30 minutes and suck on it. You have to actually take a bite. A pretty dodgy woman came into the pokies room in our venue, gambling/slot machine equivalent that we have in Australia, and demanded for us to find an outlet for her to plug in her charger for her phone, so we found her a machine near an outlet and left her to her devices. Later, one of our staff was waved down by another stressed patron who said that a woman was moaning in the pokies room, went in to find out she'd actually plugged in a vibrator and was going to town on herself in front of everyone. Lived in Australia for a little over a year and worked in restaurants. The worst stories I've heard all involve the pokies, i.e., ruining marriages, people's lives. They have some special kind of holdover people. I was robbed at knife/machete/gunpoint, there were 3 of them, and people refused to get on the floor as they were ordered and just kept playing. After a machete was hacked into one of the machines, they finally complied, but one tenacious sod was still reaching for the play button from the ground. Now that's a gambling addiction. I counseled a guy who would go to bed at 11 p.m., and wake up at 2 a.m. in the club at the pokies with no idea how he got there. Terrifying. Lots of funny things at New Year when everyone is in fancy dress, sad older guys who have drank so much they haven't noticed their wig has slipped. The weirdest is definitely having a mariachi band burst in through the door of the pub, play 2 songs and leave. Keep in mind this is the UK, it was a dark rainy midweek night. I don't know where they came from or where they went after, but while they played, they had the attention of everyone in the pub. Lola Wild Mariachi Band appears. In the UK no less. That's fantastic. Lola's a Texan. I was like, yeah, mariachi band, so what, no big deal. Lol, you can't escape them when you're in San Antonio. It took a second to figure out what was going on, lol. In a parking garage in San Antonio, I was once nearly run over by a station wagon full of mariachis. Where did they come from? Where did they go? Where did they come from, mariachi bro? Edit. There are so many likes on this weird thing that came out of my brain, and awards. Thank you so much, wasn't expecting this at all. Butt-ass naked kid maybe 5 to 6 years old came in. Reactions ranged from WTF to laughter to attempts to help. Kid went straight to this lady, an every night regular, who turned out to be his mom. Apparently, he hid in her car and she was too zonked on various substances to notice. Kid was naked because he had literally nothing to wear, I later learned, and their duplex apartment a few blocks away was a vermin-infested hellhole. Mom was a serious addict. Her kid following her to the bar was the impetus that led to him being taken away and her getting sent to rehab. I learned all this after the fact. But the kid walking naked into the bar was definitely among the most unexpected things I've ever seen. That's just heartbreaking. Huh, that's really sad. I did the same to my mom at a church outing when I was maybe 3 or 4. We had been playing in the water. I was alone in a room to change into something dry when I decided, completely naked, that I needed to ask my mom something. So I went searching for my mom, stark naked at the church picnic. What happened? Did you guys give him anything to cover himself or call 911? A nice customer wrapped her jacket around him while his mom drunkenly made excuses and blathered on about whatever druggies babble about. We called CPS. I gave him some apple juice and a cheeseburger which he snarfed down. Poor kid was obviously malnourished. Cops came and arrested mom for neglect and child endangerment, as well as public intoxication. A social worker who was aware of the situation arrived at about the same time, brought child-sized clothes, and took him away. Me and a few witnesses gave statements. The next evening a journalist came in and got my boss's blessing to run a story in the paper about it. He asked me a few questions about the event. I found out about the kid's living conditions and the aftermath from the article he wrote, which also had details released by CPS and local law enforcement. Y'all are good peeps. Thank you. Ironically, this was a crappy dive bar I only worked at for a few semesters in college. Good is not a word I'd use to describe most of our patrons. But I suppose even the typical scum and villainy has empathy for kids, especially ones in such a bad situation. It's surprising how close dive bar regulars can get. My local watering hole is about half a step up from a dive, and when one of our regulars died of COVID last year, we held an impromptu memorial service in the parking lot for her. Bars were closed at that time. She was simply known as Mama, and she was a sweet old lady who would get all dressed up and face painted for Oregon Ducks games or Blazers games. She would listen to whatever ails you might have, give advice, and was very free with warm hugs and kisses on your cheek. And the memorial was a bunch of crusty old drunks getting very teary-eyed over the loss of one of their favorites. Our local dive bar is now a Taco Bell. Sad, really. I once served Catman a Bloody Mary. Dude had body modifications that were hard not to stare at. He was very friendly. He ordered a blue rare steak and returned it for being overcooked. I told him we can't legally feed you anything rawer than a blue rare steak. He hissed and ordered another drink. I'd like to add he ate with no silverware. The utensils were there, but he didn't touch them. He had fang teeth and what seemed like a strong bite from lots of practice. Did he push his full glass off the table and want another? I've just learned face palm doesn't mean you were laughing so hard you hit your face to your palm. Interpret that award as such. Oh crap, I've been found. Lol, I hope this is real. Very real. Happened at the Beachfire Grill when it was in business on Whidbey Island in Washington State. We saw the Catman on Whidbey too. Heard he moved there because people kept staring at him. Dude. You made yourself look like a cat, with the tail even. We can't hardly not look. Amazing. When I first was reading I saw Catman and I almost didn't read the rest before asking. Glad I did though, lol. I could read stories like these all day, I think, haha. Hissing and ordering a drink sounds like it could be the solution to all my problems. I worked at a bar years ago and we had the Lizard Man come and do a performance for an event. He was a super nice dude. Yes, my father is a genuine dude. I once served Catman a Bloody Mary. I thought this was Cartman. Who is Catman? A fellow known for extreme body modifications, having undergone numerous surgical procedures to make himself look like a tiger. He died by suicide in 2012. Web link. I didn't know he committed suicide. How sad. A heavy-set Middle Eastern man was drinking heavy and got very drunk at my bar. When he went to the restroom, his prime rib dinner had arrived. I think he shot up some smack in the stall because when he came back way drunker. He then cut a long big strip of prime rib, about the size of a thick hot dog, then while glaring at me, threw his head back and proceeded to swallow it whole like a baby bird would a worm from its mother. It of course got stuck in his throat, choking him, and he passed out and fell on the floor. We cleaned out his air passage and gave him CPR. 10 minutes passed and he was still unconscious when the paramedics arrived. He left with a heartbeat but died later that night in the hospital. I was chuckling picturing him swallowing it, and then it took a dark turn. I'm so sorry you had to see that. That escalated quickly. Pretty ridiculous way to go though. That's horrible. Oh Jesus. At least you did the best you could. I did, and there was a doctor in the house. We tried together. Clearly, the message is this: excess is death. Gordon Ramsay walked in, ordered a half-sized margarita, and told me it was perfect after he finished it. He was a effing gentleman and even bowed and said thank you on the way out. I later learned they were filming an episode of Kitchen Nightmares around the corner, and he knew the chef who owned the restaurant where I was bartending. He came in the next night too. I had a conversation with effing Gordon Ramsay 2 days in a row. Finally, some delicious effing margarita. That is super effing cool, man. Gordon Ramsay, I'm off the clock, you're not paying me enough to scream at you. Is perfect, gentleman. Care to try our chocolate risotto with peppermint marinated asparagus tips and Pepsi Bois Blanc over a bed of horse jerky? Honestly, I think the Gordon Ramsay you see in America is a character. He's so chill in the UK versions of shows, but that isn't entertaining enough for the States. 100%. I'm Australian, but have copies of Kitchen Nightmares UK, and the US version is vastly more dramatic. Honestly, a fight between someone dressed as SpongeBob and someone as an Oompa Loompa. No one was seriously hurt. Ah man, that reminds me of when my roommate, while dressed as Gumby, once got in a fight at a bar with the other Gumby. Other Gumby's buddy, who was dressed as Pokey, was egging them both on. Yes, it was Halloween. Edit, my Gumby's costume was cooler, he lined his silhouette with light-up LED wire. I watched a guy dressed as Master Chief one-punch a guy in a Joker costume. It was amazing. I was also jumped by a group of guys dressed as Smurfs. My friend saved me from anything too serious, but I was covered in blue paint with plenty of bruises and road rash. This is how aero bars are made. One lady, older, mid-50s, walked up to 2 younger guys, barely 21, and said, "I got big hands and a tight pussy." I had to tell her to leave them alone. She was very drunk there regularly. I'm more interested in why she thought big hands was a selling point. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to be the first to know about Red Rabbit Reader's new videos. If you like our videos, please like them on YouTube and share them with your friends. We welcome your comments below. Press to start another of our videos.